MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. This is episode 306. Jason, Fire eliminated. Cubs not in the playoffs. Hockey season's here, though. That's big.
Yeah, the Hawks are going to be one of the worst teams in the league again.
Okay, you got the Bears, bro. You got the Bears.
Yeah, we got the Bears. 2-2 Bears. Let's go.
It is a fun time around. I think the fall is always fun, just in general for sports in America. Yeah. You got soccer continuing, soccer in Europe starting for the most part. It's a lot of fun, a lot of stuff going on. Getting nice and cozy with the sweatshirt on and watching TV at the end of the day. Obviously, exactly right. We're recording this on the Mets, the second game of the MLB postseason against the Brewers. So I could either be really happy or really sad the day this episode drops. You'll know the answer to that if you watch that game or follow the Mets scoreline there. But we are here to talk Major League Soccer. We're here to talk U.S. soccer. Last week was a little bit of a rushed episode. Again, hand up, that's on me. But we got a lot to catch up on, Jason. I think first and foremost, I want to talk about the news that dropped today. And, I don't think we have too much to chat about here. I think this can be a little high level, but Mauricio Pochettino dropping his first USMNT roster for the upcoming October training camp. And then obviously we're playing Mexico this month as well. So I don't know if Pochettino's gonna be the manager for that game. Maybe he's still adapting. I know he only got his green card 2 days ago, so he hasn't even been to the US. So I think he's probably still trying to figure some logistics out there. But it was a very interesting first roster underneath him. A lot of typical names that we've seen, some names that we haven't seen. I'm not going to read through the whole roster. You guys can find that on various social media sites, the US Soccer's website, everything like that. But Jason, was there a name you were surprised to see? Was there a name you were surprised not to see on this list? Anything around Pochettino's kind of first announcement here?
I guess there's a name I was excited to see on the list, which was Haji Wright. I think based on how he's been playing for Coventry and what he's been in, consistent minutes, consistent time, consistent contributions for them, I feel like he's kind of earned that call up, and I was excited to see that one. I was literally looked at this maybe an hour ago, but I like to see Zach Steffen on there. I don't think that's a surprise. I don't think it should be a surprise to people who have been watching MLS all season, but I think it is a surprise to people.
I think I was going to say, I took it as a surprise, not because Zach Steffen doesn't deserve to be there, but because we haven't seen Zach Steffen in the USMNT picture in a few years now, so it was a nice surprise.
He's earned his spot back. Not necessarily the number one, but when you look at some of the goalkeepers' names, I think I was kind of hoping to see Gaga in there after what he's been playing for Barnsley. That's not even the fire in me, okay? I'm just simply saying the
English third division is really piquing your interest.
You'd rather have Ethan Horvath? I feel like that experience is done with. No offense.
I would rather have the starting goalkeeper for a championship club than the starting goalkeeper for a League One club. Yes, Jason.
I had 4 keepers set up. One of these guys isn't playing at all anyway. 2 of them probably aren't playing at all anyway.
I think you're just salty. You're just salty that guy's not there.
If we're looking long term,
you're like, where's Chris Brady?
No, I'm thinking long term. If we're looking at honestly, sure, Chris Brady. If you're looking long term at what you want for the future of the team, do you genuinely think Turner, Horvath, and Zach Steffen are the 3 keepers that are going to be in this team for the next 10 years?
No, but I think at this point we have given up any right to look long term under Pochettino, and I think the vision under Pochettino needs to be we have a World Cup in a year and a half.
He also has no need to look long term, considering he's only here for 4 years or whatever, 2 years.
Look, we'll get to that discussion of after 2026 World Cup, does Pochettino hang around? Because it's not technically a full cycle, so we'll get to that. I'm not even touching that right now. But I think Pochettino right now is who is the best that I have at every single position? I need to get these guys into camps. I need to get these guys playing minutes under me. I need to see them with my own eyes. And I don't think, 20-year-old Gaga Slonina is maybe the main focus right now for him. Maybe
I'm not upset about it. First of all, I don't mean. I'm just simply saying if one of these keepers could have been a younger keeper. I mean, sure they have Schulte, but still, you get what I'm saying.
I agree. And correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I think there was a few things here. It was cool. And this one, I mean, I don't think there's much conversation here. It was cool to see Brendan Aronson listed as a midfielder and not an attacker or a forward. That's fun. Yeah. We saw that under Greg a lot, which he is not a winger in my eyes. He's more of a central midfielder. It was cool to see Aiden Morris make this roster. He's been doing great things with Middlesbrough. But the one thing that was interesting to me is Chris Richards injured. Did I miss that somewhere? Because to me, he's looked like the best center back when he's played for us, and he's doing.
Oh, and he's a Premier League center back.
He's doing pretty good things in the Premier League, right? The center back grouping of Austin Trusty, Mark McKenzie, Miles Robinson, and Tim Ream. I mean, Tim Ream, I get it, the experience, he's been there, probably wanting to keep a little leadership there. Austin Trusty just got the move to Celtic, and he's looked okay. I'm not going to say he's looked great. Mark McKenzie, same thing for Toulouse. I love Mark and the League move. Great for him. I love it. The upgrade from the Belgian league to the French league. But Mark's, I think you're still probably adapting to a new country, new league. And Miles Robinson, we've seen him around, and he's been on the Olympic roster and everything like that. So the center back selections were just interesting to me because Chris Richards, I don't think he's injured, so that was a weird toss up. Tyler Adams, I mean, he's injured. When isn't he? No offense to Tyler. And the same thing with Serginho Dest, but other than that,
this is just like he's always hurt.
No, exactly, right. But other than those three, those were the only, and obviously, the big one that everyone's going to mention is Gio Reyna. But
I was going to say that
it's not playing, which is a nice thing to see that Gio Reyna.
His parents don't get upset with Pochettino.
I think Pochettino. Hopefully, there's no blackmail on Pochettino from college days, Jesus, it's bad. I don't know. That whole situation was a fucking mess and embarrassing for multiple parties involved. But ultimately, I think the roster's good. I don't think there's much to complain about. I'm excited to see how they play.
Any complaint about this roster would be like just trying to find something wrong with
the Gio Reyna truthers out there are trying to already get Poch out, Pochettino.
The guy doesn't play any minutes, okay? No. I mean, to be fair, like Matt Turner doesn't get very many minutes either. But
goalkeeper's different. But whatever. So look, I like the roster though. Pochettino did come out in his press conference today saying that they're going to be working on the 4-3-3 and as well as a 4-2-3-1. So I'm interested to see, tactically what Pochettino is going to try to do different. And we'll see it soon enough. Hopefully in the friendly against Mexico this month. But let's move it forward. Last week we kind of talked about the impacts of all the cup finals that were going on around US Soccer, which was a very fun night. The games didn't really live up to the hype of just the night of champions.
The games sucked.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Jason, you said that was usually me in the situation. So very, I like that side of you. But US Open Cup, LAFC, they took down Sporting Kansas City in pretty efficient fashion once you got through extra time, and the quality of LAFC shined. They got the what is it, the camel off their back, straw off their back, whatever it is that they couldn't win a cup final. They did it. Olivier Giroud apparently.
The camel on their back is definitely Columbus and not just cup final.
Oh, 100%. It's not just trophies. It's definitely Columbus. But there was a lot of just cool aspects of the game. We don't really need to dive into the trophy aspect. We can, but Kai Kamara sealing the game in extra time. Olivier Giroud only scoring in apparently finals for LAFC. This was his second goal scored. What was this game? And then after the game, Kai Kamara goes up to the press conference and this was a direct quote from him. Garber was here. I saw him. He was at the podium. He gave me a medal. Get him in here and make sure that he don't take MLS away from this. And by this, he means the Open Cup. Is this what he's doing? This is American soccer right here, which was unbelievable for, I think, especially Kai Kamara specifically.
Legend. Honestly, just a legend.
Exactly, right. That's not Olivier Giroud saying it, where he's been here for a cup of coffee.
It's a guy who's been on multiple MLS teams for years. Honestly, like a decade plus.
This is a guy who's second all time in scoring in the league. Like it's incredible. So I don't know if anything that I just mentioned is what you want to talk about, but just so many incredible moments from this game and from this outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we talked about was like, how can LAFC use this game to like gain the confidence? I don't know about confidence necessarily because it's LAFC, but like gain that finish to the season that they need, right? And then they went and turned around and beat Cincinnati, and that was a huge win for them. So I think just from the bigger picture, and let's just put it like first off before going too far into LAFC, Kansas City played great in this game. Like props to them.
They played a very strong 90. A very strong 90.
Yeah. So good for them. But anyways, I just think
you're like, fuck them. Move on.
No. I actually do feel like, you know what? Great job for having such a bad season. They have something to be proud of.
Can I just say one thing about Sporting Kansas City, and I'll let you get down your LAFC rabbit hole? Is just, yes, 90 minutes of pretty strong competitive soccer from SKC. I think Jake Davis is I'm moving on from him as a right back. I think he is a legitimate central midfielder. I love Jake Davis. Kid's a stud. Continue, Jason.
Anyway, going back to LAFC, like I think this actually was sort of like a springboard for their season. They did get that trophy. Like you said, they kind of got I think it's monkey off the back. I don't think it's camel, but I don't know. They got the camel off the back.
It might be straw that broke the camel's back is what I was thinking of as I'm thinking now. But yeah,
I'm not great with sayings either.
Some animal is off LAFC's back. That's
now
it.
They can just focus and finish out their season strong, which they immediately turned around and beat one of the best teams in MLS. So good for them. I mean, they're still competing for these final spots. They're still competing for second in the West. So the games still matter. Like every game at this point is basically there's 3 games left for pretty much everyone. They're all playoff games if you're trying to compete for these spots. So
exactly,
especially like, sure, we have a lot of teams that have now kind of clinched their spot. There's 2 or 3 total, but every game there's potential to move up and down in the standings. So I think just getting this win, getting that trophy, moving on, finishing out the season strong and going. I mean, we've both talked about how this team is potentially the team to beat, if not up there with the teams to beat in the West. And I think they need to start showing it because they did have a little bit of a fall off there right before that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this stretch from Campeones Cup to not Campeones Cup, the Champions Leagues Cup. Gee, I hate all these competitions.
You're doing well.
The Leagues Cup final to the point of the Open Cup final victory, right? Like I think there was a stretch where I think maybe LAFC lost their way, a little lack of confidence, whatever it may be. But we've seen it, and I'm not going to say 2 games is the entire season, but this is the time of the season where you want to string together solid performances. You won a trophy, like to your point, you build confidence. They beat Cincinnati 2-1. With a heavily rotated roster. Like Christian Oliveira was playing like right wing back. Like this team rotated and still took down Cincinnati in Cincinnati. So we're not going to talk too much about it here. LAFC's currently in second place in the West with that victory this past weekend on 52 points. I think if they're playing confident soccer, this is a dangerous team. LAFC are traveling. Well, if you're listening to this day of drop, the game happened yesterday, the midweek action. So LAFC, they're hosting St. Louis midweek, and then on the weekends, they're traveling to Sporting Kansas City. Yeah. To me, should be an easy 6 points. I think you've beaten Sporting Kansas City recently. St. Louis, they're playing much better soccer. Cedric Teuchert is a fantastic signing. Love him for St. Louis, but I think it's a little too late for them. I think LAFC, if they want to get back to an MLS Cup, play some top soccer, everything like that, they need to build off this, and they did it against Cincinnati. Now let's keep it going. That's where I'm at with LAFC. Let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about the Canadian Championship final. I know Jason is going to celebrate being the only one to predict a trophy right this year on this podcast. But
was it the easiest trophy to predict? Maybe.
maybe Campeones Cup might be the only one easier. Which I don't even think we predicted, but it's fine.
We did. I pulled it up.
But the Canadian Championship, Vancouver Whitecaps took down Toronto FC in penalty kicks. The Whitecaps are now back-to-back champions, 3 times in a row under Vanni Sartini. This is his competition. Whitecaps, traditionally their backup goalkeeper Isaac Boehmer had to start and play in this one because the Canadian Championship does require, I'm pretty sure, at least 3 starters to be Canadian, which is, cool, awesome, domestic competition, get it. But Boehmer had a day. He made 7 saves in regulation, which included a PK save on Federico Bernardeschi, and also in the PK shootout to solidify the game, he did make a save there as well. Not the most thrilling game, very small crowd up in Vancouver, which is a little disappointing in my eyes. I know last year people were saying they put like 20,000, 23,000 in the stadium. There's only about 12,000 in the stadium this year. But ultimately, Vanni Sartini and the Whitecaps win again. They are, just like LAFC, playing some really strong soccer heading into the playoffs. Jason, I mean, congratulations, first of all, but the Whitecaps, what are your thoughts on the Caps right now?
I mean, that game was, like you said, not the most exciting game, but a trophy is a trophy. I'll take it. They also clinched their spot for the playoffs, which is huge.
And Champions Cup.
Yeah, so they had a good week, man. They might have the best week out of everyone. They might have had the best week out of everyone here. There's a little movement that could happen still, but hopefully they can continue to stay in one of those permanent playoff spots. That sounds like a weird way to say it, but whatever.
I got you. Everyone understands.
But yeah, I mean, I think good week for them. I don't have a whole lot to say. Like, again, this Canadian Championship, I think we both picked Vancouver to win this, as far as I remember. You might have picked Toronto.
I think I picked Montreal, so I went down real bad. So.
Oh, I meant like last week.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah, last week we were both on.
No, yeah. Let it be known that Tom really botched this pick at the beginning of the season. I did great, but yeah, it's the only green on the prediction chart.
Right, that's it. The only green we see. But no,
yeah. I mean overall, it was not the best game, like you said. Good win for them, but
yeah. I mean, even after that, right, they rotated and they drew the Portland Timbers on the weekend 1-1. Brian White continuing to score. I looked at Brian White's goal scoring totals after he scored, and I was like, damn, didn't realize the dude's been like, he's always been a good MLS striker, right? But like, I don't know. I wasn't expecting the total. It was like 17 or 16 or something like that. Like, he's scoring in bunches this year for the Whitecaps. He just recently came back from injury. Now I know they have some injury concerns with Ryan Gauld and Stuart Armstrong. They're two of their DPs. So they have to try to hopefully maneuver and navigate through that. But I like where the Whitecaps are at right now. And I think,
they also probably have the hardest next 2 games, or the most important, maybe not the hardest, but the most important next 2 games of any team, considering they play Seattle tonight, yesterday for listeners, and then they go and play Minnesota. So 2 crucial games, crucial points in those.
Minnesota is playing some pretty good soccer in the last few games. Like, they've been impressive, and they look like they're really pushing for one of the playing game spots, and they've gotten themselves right into the picture, pretty much kind of canceling out any hope that I had for Dallas. But Minnesota, they've been playing strong, so it might be a tougher few games. And I think, just to quickly mention Toronto, because obviously they're in their own little playoff race here. I don't know if they're catching Charlotte. I mean, they might. Charlotte hasn't been the best in recent weeks as well, but they are firmly in a playing game spot. But they have plenty of
fire tonight. Just so
strong bounce. If you're going to bounce back against anyone in the league, you're going to bounce back against the Chicago Fire.
You don't got to say it like that.
All right, let's talk about the last cup final of last week. The Campeones Cup did not go MLS's way here. Club America did defeat the Columbus Crew in penalty kicks. The Crew now, I mean, maybe they're getting the camel on their back. I don't know. And they lost their second final of 2024. They did lose both of those finals to Liga MX opponents as well. The Champions Cup final loss as well as the Campeones Cup final loss now. Some controversy here. I know Club America's goalkeeper, his foot was off the line on the Malte Almundsen PK. Some people were annoyed, but apparently, according to the rules that were going around social media afterwards, Amundsen completely missed anyway, so it doesn't matter that he was technically off the line. At the end of the day, PKs are a crapshoot. This is a one-off, overhyped, friendly for a trophy, and I think the Crew have their focus on MLS Cup at this point of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to win. Like, I could pretend I didn't care, but I kind of wanted them to win. So, like, it was a bummer. But like you said, I mean, another a night of pretty, I want to say like boring, but just not like great finals overall. And that was the third of them, and it was fine, right? Like, it sucks, but I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. Like you said, it's kind of like a glorified friendly.
I mean, look, this was the best played game of the three. I personally think, and PKs are always fun, but like, yeah, it's just another game in my eyes. Maybe that's the wrong way to view it. I mean, I did celebrate when New York City won Campeones Cup, so I'm a hypocrite too. I don't know, but here we are at this point of the season. You know, I just think the Crew, Wilfried Nancy, they want to win trophies. They want to win every game they play in, and that's fantastic. I just don't think the Campeones Cup, whether they'd actually say it or not, was atop of that list ultimately. But I think, you know, let's talk about the top of the East, because the Crew are up there. They've been doing pretty well in recent weeks. I think we're seeing some slight struggles. We're seeing some slight goal scoring struggle, or sorry, opposite of that. We're seeing some goal scoring perfect play from Cucho Hernandez and everyone like that. But I think keeping the ball out of the back of the net has been a little bit of my personal concern from the Crew as we get down the stretch. Do you have any concern? Do you think there's maybe too many games on their schedule and we're just seeing them slow down? Or you just think, like, you know, it's kind of just get through what the rest of this regular season is, try to get second place and focus on the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm not concerned. I mean, they still have the lowest goals conceded in the East by a pretty decent margin outside of Charlotte. So it's like 3 goals to Charlotte that they're, I don't know, beating them by, I guess. And then it's like, what, 10 goals to the next team. So I'm not really concerned with how that's going on, because I know, like, or at this point, there's no reason to doubt that they can't kind of lock in and go on a run, which we saw last year with, like, under Nazi, like, they're fine. Their goal differential is massive, so that's the best in the league. So yeah, I'm really not concerned, but I see your point. Like, that it could be concerning, but it's just not, because it's the Crew. And I think we talked about this, like, with the top 3 teams. We texted back and forth, and you're like, you know, there are concerns a little bit with some of these top teams, but it's like, yeah, that to me, it's like there's bigger concerns that I have with the rest of the East.
No,
I don't feel like I am very concerned with the top of the East, because they are just like, their concerns are like, it kind of is concerning if I'm looking for an issue, but their teams are so much better. They're so much stronger across the board. And I don't, at this point, have a reason to doubt most of them.
I think personally, when I'm looking at concerns, I'm looking at, like, how are you going to or going to not win MLS Cup at this point of the year? I don't give a shit if you finish second or third in the playoffs. I don't care, you know, if it's like, I don't care about specific seeding. I think if you're a home playoff team, you're one of the best. You should be a contender for MLS Cup, and that's how it should play out. I just think if we're talking the East specifically, Cincinnati, Columbus, Miami, the performances haven't been great recently. Columbus, they allowed 3 goals to Orlando 2 weeks ago. They just drew DC. They just lost this final to America, which, again, I have mixed feelings on whether this final, you know, how much it really means to the rest of the season run, but could have been a confidence boost, you know. So I have my concerns there. Miami, they were absolutely definites in my brain a few weeks ago to break the single season points record. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but now they need a win out, and they do face Columbus tonight or yesterday, if you're listening to this when the podcast drops. Cincinnati, I mean, they're losing games. They can't win. They can't get a win at home. And that's a scary thing heading into the playoffs. So it's not, do I think Cincinnati's going to face well against the Red Bulls? Yeah, I think they are. But is it when you go up against LAFC, the Galaxy, whoever you want to say makes it out of the West, are you going to win MLS Cup? And that's where I have my concerns.
I think with Columbus, I guess I'm just the least concerned, considering they just did win MLS Cup.
Fair. Right? And that's fair.
And they have arguably the best coach. I don't even know if it's arguable anymore, but like the best coach in MLS. I just feel like it's easy to trust them. I don't know. It might come back to bite me. I do think like there are concerns with not being able to win at home, which Cincinnati has had recently. That's kind of like in MLS, like a staple. You win at home.
You should be winning at home. Right? Yeah.
Like if you look at the records for these teams, all of these teams, the home records are usually pretty. Even the bad teams usually have decent home records compared to their away record. And honestly, Cincinnati's is the opposite. Their away record's like phenomenal.
They're awesome on the road.
Yeah, and their home record is not. So it's a little weird, but at the same time, it's like you said, am I worried about Cincinnati playing the Red Bulls? No. Am I worried about Cincinnati playing Columbus or Inter Miami or LAFC or the Galaxy? Yeah, probably a little bit. But I think in any of those games, I think that top tier is actually like so close in terms of quality that I think, you put Inter Miami against LAFC, I'm not going to be 95% confident one of those two teams is going to win.
I just had the thought of if that's MLS Cup, I don't know where I'm going with that pick, but that's a conversation and a thought I can save for in a few weeks, hopefully, maybe, knock on wood, but let's talk Inter Miami. So the big question here is Inter Miami, they're going to win the Supporters Shield. I know I put that as a question. That was a silly point I put on there. But
they need one win of the next three. Even then, they probably would still win it if someone else loses.
I think they need, if they beat Columbus midweek action this week, which is a toss up at this point, right? If they do, they win it. But yeah, I mean, like I think it's just pretty much they could probably just get a point on each of these games, and some other people will help, and it'll get there.
Well, I mean, it all depends on the Galaxy. That's really the only team they're competing with. They're at 58 points, and they have Colorado, which is
Galaxy.
A tough game.
I think they're off midweek, if I'm not mistaken.
They have Colorado tonight.
Oh, they have Colorado. Oh, okay. Someone else is off.
And then they have Austin, and then they have. Sorry, I'm trying to look on the fly. The Dynamo. So they don't have an easy end of season here either.
No. And I mean, ultimately, that's where it comes down to me. It's like, of any of these clubs, like, just get your job done. Like, win your games, and you don't have to worry about anyone else helping you out. But ultimately, Inter Miami are 8 points off of tying the MLS single season record with 3 games left to go. They're on 73. The single season record is 73 points. So they're on. I probably should have. Thank you. 65 points. Bad math off the top of my head. But if Miami obviously win all of their last 3 games, they will break that single season points record at 74 points. Any dropped points, they're falling short of that, and there's no way they can tie it mathematically. So they go away to Columbus midweek, away to Toronto at the weekend, and then they're home versus New England on decision day. Jason, my big question for you is, do they do it? Do they break the record? This Columbus game tonight decides it all.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it comes down to, do they beat Columbus? Because, but I this whole time reading that question, I was kind of leaning no, but I kind of want to just say yes. I think they're going to go for it. I think they want to finish strong. I think, like, the way they've been playing, it's still a team with Messi. I don't know. They dropped points last weekend, which was not great, but
they've dropped points their last 3 games, right?
To Detroit. Yeah, 3 draws in a row. Atlanta, NYCFC, and Charlotte. So that's not great. I don't know. Like, my gut says don't, pick them to break this record, but my heart is saying, or I don't know, what the other part of my body is saying, do it.
I think it's the Shield. I don't think they do it personally. As you mentioned before, Columbus does have the best goals against record in the league. Yes, that's been tested recently, like I mentioned, with DC and Orlando scoring on them in bunches. But I personally think it's in Columbus. This is still a Columbus team that we're talking about being potentially one of the best, if not the best all time. Wilfried Nancy's still the coach on the other sideline. And Tata Martino's even recognized the greatness of Wilfried Nancy at this season. So ultimately, if this was in Miami, I think I'd say yes. Since this is in Columbus, I'm saying no. I think Miami obviously get the Shield, but I don't think
if they win too, like part of me thinks they're just going to be like, all right, let's just focus on the playoffs, and they could drop points to like Toronto or New England. Like,
I don't know, bro. Tata Martino, even when he was with Atlanta, he was so fixated on the Shield being like the trophy he won.
Yeah, but if they win tonight, they have the Shield.
But I think that points record also sounds pretty nice.
I think it sounds really nice, which is why I think I'm probably picking them to get it. But I am. You know what? I hand up. I'm picking them to get it. They got to win tonight. It's a big game.
I'll go opposite because I honestly don't think they do. But it's I guess the second part of my question on that is if they don't get it, is because this has been a conversation I've heard on Extra Time. This has been a conversation I've heard on Soccer Wise, and I've heard it. I've seen it a few other places on social media and whatnot. If they don't break the single season points record, is this a disappointing season for Inter Miami with expectations coming in and with where they were at one point?
Nope.
Wow.
Not for me. Not even close. You're telling me if they win Supporters Shield, this is a disappointing season because they didn't break the record for points with Messi missing 2 months? No, I don't think it's disappointing. Not at all. Not
part of me.
I think they should have probably broken it. I think some of like the past 3 weeks they should have gotten more than 3 points. But yeah, I don't think it would be disappointed. Like if my mentality is so much like in the dumps for my team that it's like
win a
I
trophy.
would take this within. But okay, so if they win this Supporters Shield, don't break the record, and then are we just assuming they don't do well in MLS Cup playoffs? Then because if they do well in that and they win that, then how could anyone consider that a disappointment?
I personally think it's calling it a disappointment, and that's the word I've been seeing thrown around. So that's why I worded it that way. I think calling it a disappointment is harsh. I think you can't win the Shield, potentially have a 70-plus point season in Major League Soccer, and really have no one else kind of compete with you for the Shield, and have that be considered a disappointing season. I do think it does not taint the Shield, but it makes me a little less
not every team can break the record every year, man.
But I think the team that has Messi, Busquets, Alba, Suarez, Redondo, Gomez is about to get sold to Brighton for $22 million. I think if there was a team that should have, it was this team.
Yeah, but isn't winning MLS Cup enough to be that was successful?
Look, this team
we literally went from the worst team in the league 2 years ago.
Fair. I think if this team wins a double, wins the Shield and MLS Cup, yeah, I'm all for it.
If they lose to Toronto in the first round, then yeah, I would be very disappointed.
If they lose the play-in game, the winners.
Well, the play-in game winner.
I think I'm totally fair in saying that it's a disappointment of a season if they were to lose whoever wins the play-in game.
Even then, I have a hard time saying it was a disappointment winning the Shield, because that's such an achievement. But it's that would be disappointing if they then immediately lost. It'd be embarrassing more than disappointing, I guess. It'd be dude, seriously.
To me, it's the biggest thing in soccer here in the New York area, right, is the Red Bulls can't get it done in the playoffs. They can't win an MLS Cup. They can't win a cup final. Yeah, they have 2 Shields, but they can't get it done in the playoffs, right? That's where it's my only concern is when you value the Shield so much, and it's a valuable trophy. I personally think it's the second best trophy or third best trophy that you can win.
Debate every year.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But I'm just saying, in my eyes, it's the third best trophy you can win in U.S. soccer competitions. Like, yeah, there's a thing of like, though, but you can't get it done in the two other ones, an MLS Cup.
In terms of Champions Cup?
Champions Cup and MLS Cup, I think, are
but
one.
Like MLS, you would say second.
Yes. Yeah. In MLS, it's the second best trophy you can win. Exactly. So yeah, that's my only concern. But I don't know. Anything else on Miami before we talk about the rest of the East?
No, I don't have a ton more. I just think that's, I don't know. I can't personally say it would be disappointing. Just from my own experiences. I think the trophy is something.
I think it downplays it a little bit. I think disappointment is harsh, but I get what you're saying.
Again, I also think they break the record. So,
I mean, if they do, this entire conversation is null and void. So
yeah,
don't worry about it.
Wasted 5 minutes of people's time.
It's okay. It's what they want. They want more Miami talk. Not enough people are talking about them. Let's go to the rest of the East, though. Right. We have Orlando City, New York City, the Red Bulls. They all qualified for playoff games this past weekend, even though New York City banked the shit out of the Red Bulls 5-1. But there's one true playoff game spot left in the Eastern Conference. It's looking like that is Charlotte's spot, but Toronto, Philly, Montreal, they are all right there. Only 5 points back behind Charlotte. So Charlotte does have to pick it up. They still have to win some games and get some points done. And then obviously the two playing game spots. But right now, Jason, I mean, let's start with, you want to start with the playing game conversation, or you want to start with the final home playoff spot conversation? Because we've talked about it the last 2 weeks, but every week, obviously, it shifts a little bit with results.
Let's do playing game first.
Okay.
That ties into my games to watch.
I like it. We'll do that. So playing game. Again, right now, currently, as of recording, Toronto and Philly, they are 8-9 in the East on 37 points. Montreal is also on 37 points, but they are currently in 10th due to due to goal differential? I'm pretty sure that's what or goals allowed or goals scored.
I don't know, man. They change it all the time.
I need to figure that out before decision day. But ultimately, you have three teams on 37 points. Again, Charlotte in 7th on 42. And then you have Atlanta, DC in 11th and 12th on 34. So there's a lot going on right now in the Eastern Conference in terms of the playing game spot. With recent results, and we can talk about some of these games from last weekend, where are you leaning on who kind of rounds out, I would say, 7, 8, and 9?
Oh, I mean, I'm pretty confident saying Charlotte is probably going to hold on to that spot in 7th. Like
Charlotte, they drew Miami on the weekend, 1-1, so that's big.
Yeah, they have Montreal on Saturday. And they have Atlanta tonight.
Charlotte has Chicago tonight.
What am I?
You're looking at Montreal, sir. You're looking at different blue circles. Blue circles are getting you.
Chicago, then they have Montreal, and then they have DC. So pretty big games for them, actually. I personally think they stay in that spot because I think those are winnable games for them. I definitely
should be.
I mean, the Fire is 100% winnable. Like, I'd have more concerns if they lose tonight, but and then if they got two teams who were basically contending for those final spots.
If they do lose to Chicago or drop points to Chicago, those games against Montreal and DC are massive because those teams would be then right there for just qualifying for a playoff spot.
It's crazy because, like, I personally think Philly has the most talent out of these teams and should be in that spot, but they also have just an absolute gauntlet at the end of the season here. Like, probably 3 of the hardest teams to play, right? They have Orlando, then they have Columbus, and then they have, I think, Cincinnati. Yeah, so you have 3 of the top 4 teams in the East to close out your season.
Philly have to prove it if they want to make the playoffs.
All these games are playoff games for them, and I honestly think it's huge for them because if they do get in, how would they not be confident going into those games? So I'm going to still keep Philly. I think I'm going to probably put them in 9th. I don't even know if mathematically that works.
You're like, it's fine. It works,
oh man, the Toronto versus. I don't want to just say it stays in the way it is, but I honestly think it might stay the way it is.
But look, I think that's fair. Toronto, they take on the Red Bulls midweek, then they have Miami on the weekend. That's not easy whatsoever, but they are the one team that doesn't play on decision day this year. So they only have 2 more opportunities to get the job done on their end. So Toronto
does change things actually a little bit, honestly.
Can I just say, I think Montreal sneaks in. They've been playing really well in recent
weeks. I could see them sneaking in. I think to me, it's between Toronto and Montreal for the last spot.
So you're going Charlotte, Philly, Montreal, or Toronto in those orders, those 4 teams for 3 spots?
Yeah. I'm going to go Charlotte in 7th, Philly in 8th. Do I have to choose?
No, you don't have to.
It's Toronto or Montreal, in my opinion, in that final spot.
I think that's fair. I personally agree with you. I think Charlotte, yes, they have a tough schedule, but I think
all these teams actually kind of have tough schedules.
I was going to say, when you look at the rest of the schedules, their schedule, honestly, might not be too bad. So I do think Charlotte claims.
Honestly, if we're to choose, Charlotte, Philly, Montreal feels like the most likely, purely because there's 1 game in hand for all those teams over Toronto.
Charlotte, Philly, Montreal. Montreal plays Atlanta, then they go to Charlotte, which again, that's going to be a massive game on the weekend.
Yeah,
and then Montreal, they're hosting New York City on decision day, which New York City might rotate a roster. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say Charlotte. I'm gonna say Montreal. It doesn't matter to me, 8 or 9. You just qualify for a play-in spot. I really don't care which seed you're in. I'm gonna go Charlotte, Montreal. I'm gonna say Toronto, and the only reason why I'm gonna say that is because the Red Bulls are playing some shit soccer in recent weeks, and Toronto plays. That's it. I'm going purely based off the Red Bulls just got smacked by us on the weekend, so maybe Toronto comes in, gets 3 points against the Red Bulls, and that helps out everyone along the way ultimately. Besides the Red Bulls, obviously. But Jason, I guess we can just quickly mention this. Was there a result from either of these teams, the Orlando City win, the New York City win, or maybe we can talk the Red Bulls loss, whatever you prefer, that stood out to you from the weekend, from these the true playoff teams, I guess?
I think Orlando City right now is, they did have 2 weeks ago, the 4-3 loss to Columbus, but then again, that's a loss to Columbus. That's
exactly
kind of like a written in loss. I'm not that, and 4-3 is I don't you're putting 3 on Columbus. That's almost 10% of the goals they've allowed.
Fair.
So I think Orlando, if I were to think of any of these teams, I'm pretty sure them being in 4th feels right to me. It's also what I picked at the beginning of the season. Surprisingly,
you're just hedging on your preseason picks. That's it.
No, but I think based on, NYCFC, your team has actually started to look a little better. Okay, they had a very, very rough run there, but I think out of the teams competing for that home playoff spot, Orlando is the team that should be the one to have it.
I agree.
Based on just talent alone, and they should have it.
It was a big win against Dallas, 3-1. Romero Enrique with a goal and assist. Martin Ojeda had 2 MLS assists in this one, but Facundo Torres has been playing really well. I know they're dealing with some injuries, and I think they have a suspension to Dagger Dan Thorharlison. I've nailed that in recent weeks. But they,
that while he goes to sleep.
That's what I'm practicing in bed. Yeah. They have some suspensions and some injuries going on right now for some midweek action, but I do think Orlando City, they're in the best form. I think they probably have the best talent of those 3, teams that we were mentioning, the 2 New York clubs in Orlando. So I would agree with you. And we said it last week, and I think at this point we'll probably keep it pretty consistent that Orlando should and will get that final home playoff spot with the 2 New York teams, and then
Philly
Charlotte.
game tonight is a big one, and then they have Cincinnati. Honestly, like these teams have some tough matchups towards the end of the season.
Probably the East
The
is
way
a
it's
little
played
bit of
out is exciting, I think, for us and for fans of those teams. Is probably stressful, but
I think the it's stressful for me. We made the playoffs, and it's still stressful for me on how things are going to round out. But
I'm pretty chill, man. I'm very chill about this season.
Good, bro. I'm just waiting for the Klopas announcement. I'm good.
Like no wooden spoon. We're good, man.
All right, let's look at the Western Conference. Let's look at the Western Conference. In the West this past weekend, LAFC, the Seattle Sounders, Houston Dynamo, and Vancouver Whitecaps all qualified.
Don't make me predict. This is the most.
We're not predicting this. This is way too many scenarios here to go down. But we talked about LAFC already. We talked about the Whitecaps already. I just want to quickly mention the Seattle Sounders and the Houston Dynamo. The Sounders defeated the Dynamo on the weekend 1-0. Paul Rothrock had the only goal there. Seattle is now in 5th. Houston's in 6th. Seattle's up by 2 points, 50 points to 48 points. Which team do you think is better? That's what I'm going to leave this question as, because we've talked about both LA teams in recent weeks. We've talked about RSL and Colorado in recent weeks. Let's give Houston, Seattle some love. Which teams do you think is better?
Every time we do this, they proceed to make me feel the opposite way on the weekend. Like every single time I've said this, I'm like, yeah, RSL, I'm not thrilled with how they're playing. Boom, they prove me wrong. Okay,
fair.
I think Seattle. Okay, first of all, like these are the games you should watch, right? The Seattle, the Vancouver, and
that's a big game.
And Minnesota. The three of those teams, like I think all play each other. You have the Minnesota plays RSL and Vancouver plays Seattle tonight. Those are massive games.
The Vancouver Seattle game it's outside of Columbus, Miami is the second best game of the night.
Yeah. And then on the weekend, Vancouver has Minnesota, which is another really good game, and Colorado has Seattle. So we're talking like those 4 teams are just in the thick of it. Is that 3 teams? I don't know.
You got it.
I think Seattle is. Last week I said Houston, man.
You picked Houston, but then Seattle came out surprising 1-0 win. Which look, I thought Houston was going to win it. I'll be perfectly honest. I think Houston, despite the loss to Seattle in Seattle, I still think Houston's the better team. I think defensively they're a better team. They
are so close though.
But
not even just those two. Like all of these teams, I'm almost willing to say like I know. In the past, and probably today, I've said LAFC and probably the Galaxy are like the 2 teams that to beat in the West. But it's like, would I be surprised if Houston came out of the West? Not really. Would I be surprised if Seattle came out of the West? Not really, man. Like
I agree.
Like there's a lot. Like Seattle or Salt Lake wouldn't really be that surprised. Most of these teams. I think when you get towards like Minnesota, Portland, the play-in teams, it's a little harder to choose. Portland,
even them though, like they're fun.
Portland could like they have that ability to just like shock you and just score
20 goals.
Have maybe like a huge gaping hole in their team with 54 goals against, man.
Yeah, I mean, look. The fact that Phil Neville keeps starting Claudio Bravo and Juan David Mosquera at the same exact time is a wild.
How can we not solve this over 38 games or whatever?
I mean, like Phil, come on, they're both offensive fullbacks. Like they don't defend well. Maybe don't play them both at the same time. But
yeah, maybe notice that you have like a bottom tier goals allowed and a top tier goals for, and start to question why you're middle of the standings.
I agree.
But no, I think personally, like the West is an absolute like bloodbath right now. I think the playoffs are going to be incredible. I don't know who I would choose where at this point. Like we could honestly see Portland in like the 6th spot at the end of the season. We don't really know.
I think that's fair. And look, ultimately to me, not to go back to the Houston-Seattle combo, but if Houston gets Hector Herrera back within the next few weeks before the playoffs and get him at least, a game or 2 before the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both said solid. Like, Houston fully healthy. We know
they're ridiculous.
We've seen where they got last year. They're terrifying. But like then again, like I think a lot of these teams are all I mean, just look at the point totals. They're all so close that you might as well just from LAFC
it's
to
a coin flip.
Is 7 points.
Yeah.
That's 7 spots in the table.
I fully agree with you. I know we're getting close. We're getting close on having to wrap this one up. Let's finish out the conversation, finish out the episode. Every MLS team has roughly 3 games left to play, right? I know a few weeks ago we put in our personal votes for our ballots for MVP. That has no impact on this conversation right here because things change. But Jason, who is your MLS MVP with roughly 3 games left to go?
I think I'm going to stick with what I chose to begin with, which was Lucho Acosta. Not to begin with the year, but
yes,
to begin with that when I voted or whatever. I think given the injuries and the kind of unpredictable nature that Cincinnati kind of had to go through with this season, going into the season, with the season, I honestly think the fact that they're competing, like this team could very well have been like in the 5th or 6th spot in the East, and we would have been like, that was a pretty impressive run they had given how many players they've lost. I mean, the injuries stacked up on them, and he's still been able to perform at such a high level. 31 goal contributions is second in the league, 12 goals, 19 assists, which is insane. Like he could theoretically hit probably, I don't know, definitely 20 assists, I would say, but like maybe
I hope he hits the 20 assist mark. Yeah, I really do.
I think like just that performance goes to show how consistent he's been recently in the past years. And I know it's just like this year, but the fact that Cincinnati is in the position they are this late in the season, competing for the 2nd spot in the East with 2 other amazing teams is like, I think really impressive. So I am probably going to stick with Lucho here.
You know, this was difficult for me because, again, we talked a little bit before the recording of like, what does MVP mean? To me, it's player of the season. It is the top player of the year. I couldn't, and I respect Evander with his 33 goal contribution so far, but I could not pick him with his team playing for a play-in game, right?
I think that's the only thing that holds me back.
That holds against him. And the same thing with Messi. I cannot, even though with 30 goal contributions, the dude's barely played compared to the rest of these guys. So I couldn't pick
I have such a hard time with that because like that's a knock in my opinion, but also it gets to the point where it's so impressive that he played only half the minutes basically. But
Lucho, to me, Cincinnati, I don't think they're finishing like top 2 in the East. So I that's just, again, for me, I couldn't pick Lucho for that, even though I think he's completely deserving for like the 3rd person on my ballot. I was between, and maybe this is a little bit of a hot take, but I was between Ricky Poch and Cucho Hernandez. Poch, I think 25 goal contributions for the team that's going to ultimately finish first in the Western Conference is huge. He is the best player, the most valuable player, the top player, however you want to word this argument on the LA Galaxy.
He's been that player for years too.
Exactly. And that's a team that's going to top their conference, but he finished second in my brain to Cucho Hernandez, right? Cucho has 29 goal contributions on the year. He's going to finish with 30 plus as an almost a guarantee, which I think is huge. The Crew are gonna, in my brain, I think they're gonna finish second in the Eastern Conference, which I think giving it to a top 2, top 3 team in the conference is a big deal, especially points wise, because it's showing how good of a team you are.
If Cincinnati finishes ahead of Columbus, you don't change your mind, but like, do you feel differently? Like,
I do. I think, in all honesty, it could come down to who finishes second in the East, because Miami is such a strong team. There's no individual that stands out to me. Again, with Messi's,
I mean, there is, but his time
with the minutes limits, and that's why, honestly, part of me was just saying it's Ricky Poch in my head, but I don't know. I can't also get behind that fully. So to me, it's. I might be changing my order here now. I'm talking myself into it. I'm gonna go Poch in 3rd, and then either Lucho or Cucho, whichever one finishes second in the East. That Ucho is gonna get MVP. That's it. That's my vote.
Honestly, like this might be a dumb comparison, but if people listen this long, they don't care. I kind of feel like Cucho. It just reminds me of like Kevin Durant. Like you just look down and you're like, oh shit, yeah, he has been producing like crazy. You know, it's like almost quiet. You just kind of, it's not like I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you know how like you're watching Kevin Durant, and you're like, oh, he kind of like he shoots, he's good. Obviously, he's amazing. Like I'm not
He
trying
just
to say,
nonchalantly has 45 points.
yeah, like you look at the score and you're like, oh shit, like he has 50 points in this game. Like I thought he had maybe 20.
Yeah.
It feels like that with Cucho. I don't know.
That's fair.
This is a fun little comparison.
No, I think that's a fair comparison. And look, I don't know if you saw that cross he had in the Campeones Cup final into the box, like an outside of the foot curler that like it's just he pulls things out of nowhere. He does it just in the blink of an eye, and it is very nonchalant. So I don't know if I completely like the KD comparison, but I get where you're going with it. So I'll
it was just a fun one. I don't know. It just popped in my head, and I was like, I'll just say it.
You're like, I'll go with it. But no, Jason, thank you for another episode. I know you got to get going. I got to get going. But guys, enjoy this time of the year. This is the fun time of the year. Decision days are right around the corner. And then we got the playoffs where Jason and I will just be previewing games and talking and covering games every single week.
Top half will be talking about the games. Bottom half will be what's next.
And it's going to be an absolute just rapid fire game after game after game. But we're here. We will be here for the rest of the 2024 MLS season, off season, and beyond. Jason, thank you. And guys, enjoy the soccer.